The scorching sun beat down on the dusty streets of Willowcreek, Colorado, as Sophia Clarke stepped off the stagecoach, her heart pounding with uncertainty. The year was 1878, and the mining town sprawled before her represented both her greatest hope and deepest fear. She clutched a crumpled letter in her gloved hand, the last correspondence from her late father, directing her to this frontier settlement where he'd staked his final claim. Sophia's emerald eyes scanned the main street, taking in the weathered storefronts, saloon, and the weary faces of townspeople going about their business. At 22, she had sold everything she owned back in Boston to make this journey west, gambling her future on whatever remained of her father's legacy. "Miss Clarke," a deep voice startled her from behind. Sophia whirled around, coming face to face with a tall man whose features were partially shadowed by his wide-brimmed hat. When he tilted his head, she noted striking blue eyes that seemed to pierce right through her. "Yes, that's me," she replied, attempting to maintain her composure despite her exhaustion. "Isaac Xavier," he said, removing his hat to reveal thick brown hair. "I was your father's partner. I've been expecting you." Isaac reached for her carpetbag, but Sophia hesitated. Her father had never mentioned a partner in his letters. How could she trust this stranger? "I have his deed," Isaac explained, seeming to read her thoughts. "And the letter you sent about your arrival. I thought you might appreciate a friendly face." His expression was solemn yet gentle, with none of the menace she'd been warned about regarding Western men. Still, Sophia had learned to be cautious. "How did you know my father?" she asked, still not relinquishing her bag. A flash of sadness crossed Isaac's features. "We worked the Silver Creek mine together for 2 years. He was a good man. I'm sorry for your loss, Miss Clarke." Something in his tone conveyed genuine regret, and Sophia relaxed slightly. "Thank you, Mr. Xavier. Most folks just call me Ike," he said with a slight smile. "Let me take you to your father's place. It's not much, but it's yours now." Reluctantly, Sophia handed over her bag and followed him down the street. Despite her exhaustion, she couldn't help noticing the way people nodded respectfully to Isaac as they passed. He walked with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his surroundings, though he didn't have the swaggering arrogance she'd associated with cowboys and frontiersmen. "Have you been in Willowcreek long?" she asked, trying to keep pace with his long strides. "About 3 years," he replied. "Came west after the war looking for a fresh start like many others. You fought in the war between the states." Isaac nodded but offered nothing more on the subject. Sophia didn't press. The conflict had ended 13 years ago, but she knew many men still carried its scars, visible and invisible. They turned onto a narrower street lined with modest homes. Isaac stopped before a small cabin with a porch that sagged slightly in the middle. "Here we are," he said, setting down her bag to unlock the door. "It's been closed up since your father passed, but I've kept an eye on it." Sophia followed him inside, immediately struck by how sparse the furnishings were: a small table with 2 chairs, a cast iron stove, and through a doorway she glimpsed a narrow bed. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams streaming through the windows. "This is it?" She couldn't help asking, her heart sinking. Isaac's expression grew uncomfortable. "Your father put everything into the mine, Miss Clarke. He believed it would pay off eventually. And did it?" She turned to face him squarely. Isaac hesitated. "We hit silver last month. Not a massive vein, but decent. I've been working it alone since he died, keeping track of your half of the earnings." Sophia stared at him in surprise. "My half? You continued to count my father's share. It was the right thing to do." He shrugged as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "There's a box in the bedroom with the ledger and your earnings so far. It's not a fortune, but it might help you get back east if that's your plan." Overwhelmed, Sophia sank into one of the wooden chairs. The journey had drained her, and this unexpected news was almost too much to process. "I'll leave you to settle in," Isaac said, placing her bag beside the door. "The pump out back works fine for water. There's a general store 2 streets over for supplies." "Wait," Sophia called as he turned to go. "Thank you, Mr. Xavier. Many men wouldn't have been so honorable." A hint of color touched his tanned cheeks. "Just doing what your father would have expected, madam. I'll come by tomorrow if that's all right. We should talk about the mine and your plans." After Isaac left, Sophia explored the small cabin that was now her home. In the bedroom, she found the wooden box he'd mentioned, containing nearly $200 and a meticulously kept ledger. She also discovered her father's clothes, a few books, and a framed photograph of herself as a child with her parents, taken before her mother died. Tears welled in her eyes as she traced her father's face in the faded image. He had left Boston 5 years ago, chasing dreams of silver and gold. Their correspondence had been sporadic, his promises of returning with a fortune never fulfilled. Now she understood why he'd invested everything in a hope that had only begun to materialize after his death. That night, Sophia slept fitfully on her father's lumpy mattress, her dreams filled with collapsing mine shafts and the stranger with the piercing blue eyes. Morning came with a sharp rap on the door. Sophia hastily pinned up her chestnut hair and straightened her wrinkled traveling dress before answering. Isaac stood on the porch holding a cloth-covered basket. "Thought you might need some provisions," he said, offering it to her. "Mrs. Patterson at the boarding house sends her regards." "That's very kind," Sophia replied, accepting the basket to find fresh bread, preserves, and a small pat of butter inside. "Please thank her for me." "Have you given any thought to your situation?" Isaac asked as she invited him in. Sophia gestured for him to sit at the table while she prepared coffee on the stove. "I'm not entirely sure what my options are, Mr. Xavier." "Well," he began, removing his hat and setting it on his knee, "you could sell your father's claim. I'd make you a fair offer, though I can't pay what it might be worth if the vein continues." Sophia turned to study him, noting the earnestness in his expression. "And my other options? You could return east and let me continue working it for you, sending your share of the profits." He shifted slightly. "Or you could stay and learn the business yourself." The coffee began to boil, and Sophia busied herself pouring 2 cups. "I must admit I know nothing about mining." "Few do when they start," Isaac replied with a small smile. "Your father didn't either." "Were you close with him?" Sophia handed him a steaming cup. Isaac's smile faded. "As close as partners get out here. He talked about you often, was saving up to bring you west or go back east himself once the mine paid off." Sophia sat across from him, warming her hands on her cup. "How did he die?" "The letter from the town doctor mentioned pneumonia, but little else." "He caught a fever last winter," Isaac explained gently. "Worked through it until he couldn't stand any more. By the time I got him to Dr. Mason, the infection had settled in his lungs. He held on for almost a week." "Was he in pain?" Sophia asked, her voice barely audible. Isaac met her gaze steadily. "Dr. Mason kept him comfortable. I was with him at the end. He asked me to write to you but made me promise not to worry you until it was over." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks. She hadn't cried properly since receiving the news 2 months ago, maintaining the composure expected of her in Boston society. Now, in this dusty cabin with a virtual stranger, the dam broke. Isaac looked away, giving her a moment of privacy. When she had composed herself, he spoke again, his voice soft. "I'll take you to his grave today if you'd like." Sophia nodded gratefully. "I would, thank you." They finished their coffee in companionable silence. Sophia found herself studying Isaac when he wasn't looking the way his hands, calloused and strong, cradled the delicate cup. The slight scar that ran along his jawline, the crow's feet at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled more often than he had in their brief acquaintance. After breakfast, Isaac escorted her to the small cemetery on the hill overlooking town. Sophia knelt beside her father's grave, marked with a simple wooden cross bearing his name, Thomas Clarke, 1824–1877. "I had a proper headstone ordered," Isaac said, standing respectfully behind her. "Should arrive on next month's supply wagon from Denver." Sophia touched the dry earth covering her father. "You've done so much. I don't understand why." Isaac shifted uncomfortably. "Your father saved my life once. Early in our partnership, there was a cave-in. He pulled me out when he could have saved himself more easily." He paused. "I never got the chance to repay him." Looking up at this man who had honored his partnership with her father beyond any legal obligation, Sophia made her decision. "I'd like to stay," she said firmly. "At least long enough to understand what my father was building here." Isaac nodded, his expression unreadable. "It won't be easy, Miss Clarke. This isn't Boston." "I'm aware of that, Mr. Xavier," she replied, rising to her feet and brushing the dust from her skirt. "But I've never shied away from difficulty." For the first time, a genuine smile spread across Isaac's face, transforming his features. "Your father said you were stubborn, determined," Sophia corrected with a small smile of her own. "We'll see which it is," he replied. "If you're serious about staying, I'd be willing to show you the mine tomorrow." "I am serious," she assured him, "and I appreciate your help." As they walked back toward town, Sophia realized she had made a momentous decision with surprising ease. Perhaps it was the need to connect with her father's final years, or perhaps it was the integrity she sensed in Isaac Xavier. Whatever the reason, Willowcreek no longer felt quite so foreign. The next morning, Isaac arrived with a borrowed horse for Sophia. The ride to the Silver Creek mine took nearly an hour along a winding trail that climbed into the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. Sophia, who had only ridden in Boston parks on carefully groomed paths, found herself clutching the saddle horn as her mount picked its way along narrow ledges. "You all right back there?" Isaac called over his shoulder. "Perfectly fine," she replied through gritted teeth. He slowed his horse until she caught up. "It's not much farther. The view's worth it, I promise." When they crested the final ridge, Sophia had to admit he was right. The valley spread out below them, with Willowcreek nestled beside the sparkling ribbon of the creek that gave it its name. The mountains rose majestically in the distance, their peaks still snow-capped despite the summer heat. "It's breathtaking," she admitted. Isaac nodded. "Your father used to sit here sometimes, just looking. Said it reminded him why he came west." They continued to a clearing where a crude wooden structure marked the mine entrance. A small cabin stood nearby, along with various equipment Sophia couldn't identify. "This is our operation," Isaac explained, helping her dismount. "Not as impressive as the big company mines, but it's ours, yours, and mine." He showed her the entrance, reinforced with timber supports, and explained how they had followed a promising vein deeper into the mountain. Using a lantern, he led her a short distance into the tunnel, pointing out the gleaming streaks of silver ore embedded in the rock wall. "We blast, then dig, then sort," he explained. "Your father was good at spotting promising veins. He had an instinct for it." "And you?" Sophia asked, studying his profile in the lantern light. "I'm better with the mechanics, ensuring the tunnels are safe, designing the supports." He ran a hand along a wooden beam. Each man brought what the other lacked. That's what made the partnership work. Outside again, Isaac showed her how they processed the ore they extracted, separating valuable minerals from worthless rock. It was difficult, dangerous work, and Sophia began to appreciate why her father's letters had often mentioned bone-deep exhaustion. "How many men does it take to operate the mine?" she asked. "Ideally 4 or 5, Isaac replied. "But since your father died, I've been hiring day laborers when I need help with the blasting or heavy lifting. The rest I manage alone." "That's why progress has been slow," Sophia realized. Isaac nodded. "That, and I've been cautious. Cave-ins are common when you rush." After touring the operation, they sat on a fallen log while Isaac sketched out plans for expanding if the silver vein continued as expected. "With proper investment, we could double production within months," he explained. "But it would mean hiring full-time workers, purchasing better equipment." "Where would such investment come from?" Sophia asked. Isaac hesitated. "There's a banker in Denver who's expressed interest. I've been putting him off until you arrived and decided what you wanted to do." "Why wait? Surely a business decision like that was within your rights as a partner." "The partnership agreement your father and I signed specified that major decisions required mutual consent," Isaac explained. "With him gone, that authority passed to his heir you." Sophia was struck again by this man's integrity. Many would have moved forward, assuming a woman would have neither interest nor understanding of such matters. "I'd like to review our options before approaching any bankers," she said decisively. "Perhaps there are alternatives." Isaac smiled. "You sound just like your father when you say that." They returned to town late in the afternoon. As they rode down the main street, Sophia became aware of curious stares from the townspeople. "They're just wondering about you," Isaac explained, noticing her discomfort. "News travels fast in small towns. Everyone knows you're Thomas Clarke's daughter. And what are they thinking?" Sophia asked. "Probably wondering if you're as stubborn as he was," Isaac replied with a hint of amusement. Outside her cabin, Isaac helped her dismount. Their hands lingered together momentarily, and Sophia felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. "Thank you for today," she said, stepping back. It was illuminating. "There's a social at the church tomorrow evening," Isaac mentioned casually. "Might be a good way to meet some folks in town if you're interested." Sophia hesitated. She had come west to settle her father's affairs, not to socialize. Yet the prospect of spending another evening alone in the cabin held little appeal. "I'd like that," she found herself saying. Isaac's smile brightened his entire face. "I'll call for you at 7 then." That night, Sophia unpacked the one good dress she had brought west, a deep blue silk that had been fashionable in Boston 2 seasons ago. As she smoothed the wrinkles from the fabric, she wondered what she was doing. Her plan had been to settle her father's affairs quickly and return east, where a teaching position at a respectable girls' school awaited her. Yet something about Willowcreek, about the mine, about Xavier's steady presence made her reluctant to rush away. Perhaps it was the connection to her father, or perhaps it was the unexpected freedom she felt here, away from Boston's rigid social expectations. The next evening, Sophia was ready when Isaac knocked. She had pinned her hair in a simpler style than Boston fashion dictated, but had taken care with her appearance nonetheless. Isaac stared momentarily when she opened the door. "Miss Clarke, you look." He paused, seeming to search for an appropriate word. "Lovely." He looked different too, having traded his work clothes for a clean shirt and string tie. His hair was neatly combed, and he had clearly shaved recently. The transformation wasn't dramatic, but it revealed a handsome face usually hidden beneath trail dust and stubble. "Thank you, Mr. Xavier," she replied, accepting his arm as they walked toward the church. The social was already underway when they arrived. Lanterns hung from the trees surrounding the churchyard, and a small group of musicians played lively tunes while couples danced on a wooden platform. Tables laden with food lined one side, and children darted between groups of chatting adults. "Miss Clarke, this is Reverend Miller and his wife, Martha." Isaac introduced her to a kindly older couple. "Welcome to Willowcreek," Martha Miller said warmly. "Your father was a good man. We were so sorry to hear of his passing." "Thank you," Sophia replied. "Everyone has been very kind." Throughout the evening, Isaac introduced her to what seemed like the entire town. Some, like the doctor who had tended her father in his final days, she thanked personally. Others, like the gossipy women who clearly wanted to know if she and Isaac were courting, she handled with the polite deflection she had perfected in Boston drawing rooms. "They mean well," Isaac murmured as they moved away from one such group, "but they do love their speculation." "I've noticed," Sophia replied dryly. "Mrs. Henderson has already planned our wedding, I believe." Isaac laughed, a rich sound that caught Sophia by surprise. "She's married off half the town in her imagination. Don't take it personally." The band struck up a waltz and Isaac hesitated before turning to her. "Would you care to dance, Miss Clarke?" Sophia hadn't danced since before her father's death, but she found herself nodding. "I'd be delighted, Mr. Xavier." He led her to the dance floor, and as his hand settled respectfully at her waist, she felt that same flutter from the day before. Isaac was a surprisingly graceful dancer for a minor, guiding her smoothly through the steps. "Where did you learn to waltz?" she asked, curious. A shadow crossed his face. "Before the war, I attended university back east. Dancing was considered an essential skill for a gentleman." "You're full of surprises, Mr. Xavier," Sophia remarked. "What did you study?" "Engineering," he replied. "Never finished. The war intervened." This explained his technical knowledge of the mine workings. Sophia realized. Not just a cowboy or common miner, but an educated man who had somehow found himself in this remote western town. As the dance ended, a commotion at the edge of the gathering caught their attention. A group of rough-looking men had arrived, clearly already deep in their cups. "Trouble," Isaac muttered, his posture tensing. "The Blackwell brothers." "Who are they?" Sophia asked, noting how other townspeople were drawing back. "They own the Big Horn Saloon," Isaac explained in a low voice, "and run various other enterprises of questionable legality. Your father and I had some trouble with them last year." The largest of the newcomers spotted Isaac and nudged his companions. They started making their way toward them, but Reverend Miller intercepted them. "Evening, gentlemen," the minister said calmly. "This is a family gathering." "Just being neighborly, Reverend," the leader replied with exaggerated politeness. "Heard Thomas Clarke's daughter was in town. Thought we should welcome her properly." His eyes found Sophia, and the predatory gaze made her skin crawl. Isaac stepped slightly in front of her. "Miss Clarke isn't receiving visitors tonight, Blackwell," he said, his voice hard. "Didn't ask you, Xavier," Blackwell sneered. "Still playing protector now that old man Clarke's gone." The tension was palpable. Sophia could feel Isaac coiling like a spring beside her, and she placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Perhaps another time, Mr. Blackwell," she said coolly. "I'm still settling in after my journey." Blackwell's eyes narrowed at her dismissal, but Sheriff Collins had appeared at his side. "You boys might want to head back to your saloon," the lawman suggested, "before anyone says something they might regret." After a tense moment, Blackwell shrugged. "Another time then, Miss Clarke. My brothers and I have business interests your father left unfinished. We'll call on you proper-like soon." As they swaggered away, Sophia felt Isaac relax slightly beside her. "What was that about?" she asked. "What business did my father have with them?" Isaac's jaw tightened. "Nothing legitimate. They tried to force your father to sell his claim last year. When he refused, there were incidents at the mine, equipment damaged, threats made. Why would they want our mine? Because they know something most don't, Isaac replied grimly. That silver vein your father found, it's bigger than I let on. If it continues as we think, it could be one of the richest strikes in the county. Sophia stared at him. Why didn't you tell me? I was going to, he said defensively, but I wanted you to understand the operation first. And now you need to understand the danger too. The Blackwells have driven out other small mine owners. They're not above violence. The festive mood of the evening had evaporated. Sophia asked Isaac to take her home, and they walked in silence through the darkening streets. At her door, Isaac finally spoke. I'm sorry about tonight, and I'm sorry I wasn't completely forthright about the mine. Sophia studied him in the moonlight. Is there anything else I should know, Mr. Xavier? He hesitated. Your father took out a loan against the claim 3 months before he died. It's due in 4 weeks. If we can't pay, we lose everything to the bank, which is owned by the Blackwell's cousin in Denver. Sophia felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. How much? $500, Isaac replied. I've been putting aside what I can, but with working the mine alone. Why didn't you tell me this immediately? Sophia demanded, anger rising. You just arrived, Isaac said defensively. You'd lost your father. It didn't seem right to burden you with this right away. It wasn't your decision to make, Sophia retorted. This affects my future, my inheritance. You're right, Isaac admitted after a moment. I was wrong to keep it from you. But I promise you, Sophia, I've been trying to protect your interests from the moment your father died. It was the first time he had used her given name, and despite her anger, the intimacy of it wasn't lost on her. How much have you saved? She asked, her voice calmer. About half, he replied. But production has been slow with just me working. Sophia thought of the money in the wooden box, her share of the mine's earnings so far. Combined with what she had brought from Boston, it might be enough to cover the shortfall, but that would leave her with nothing if the mine failed. I need time to think, she said finally. Good night, Mr. Xavier. Before he could respond, she entered the cabin and closed the door firmly behind her. Through the window, she watched him stand there for a long moment before finally turning away. Sleep eluded Sophia that night. She paced the small cabin, reviewing her options. She could sell her share to Isaac and return east with whatever he could pay her. She could attempt to sell to the Blackwells, though that option filled her with distaste. Or she could invest everything she had and pray the silver vein was as rich as Isaac believed. By morning, she had made her decision. She dressed quickly and set out for the mine, having learned the trail during their previous visit. The physical exertion of the uphill ride helped clear her mind, and by the time she reached the clearing, she felt resolved. Isaac was already at work, shirtless in the summer heat as he repaired equipment outside the mine entrance. He straightened in surprise when he saw her approaching. Miss Clarke, he said, hastily reaching for his shirt. I wasn't expecting you. Clearly, Sophia replied, dismounting with more confidence than she felt. We need to talk, Mr. Xavier. Isaac buttoned his shirt halfway, the fabric clinging to his sweaty torso. About last night. About our future, Sophia stated. I've decided to invest my savings to help clear the loan, but I have conditions. Isaac's eyebrows rose. What conditions? First, no more secrets. I want to understand everything about this operation, the finances, the prospects, the risks. She stepped closer. Second, I want to work alongside you. That's not possible, Isaac protested. Mining is dangerous work, not suitable for a woman, Sophia interrupted. Perhaps, but there must be aspects of the operation I can learn. My father believed in this mine enough to stake everything on it. I need to understand why. Isaac studied her determined expression. Your father would have my hide if he knew I let you work in a mine." "My father isn't here," Sophia said softly, "and I make my own decisions now." After a long moment, Isaac nodded. "All right, but we do it my way safely. And you stay out of the tunnels during blasting." "Agreed," Sophia said, offering her hand to seal the bargain. When Isaac took it, his calloused palm warm against hers, she felt a connection that went beyond their business arrangement. For just a moment, his blue eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "We should get started then," he said, releasing her hand. "There's a lot to learn if we're going to meet that loan payment." The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity. True to his word, Isaac taught Sophia every aspect of the operation she could safely manage. She learned to sort ore to keep the accounts, to recognize the promising gleam of silver in raw stone. She discovered muscles she never knew she had as she hauled buckets of water and pushed carts of rock. Each evening, she returned to her cabin exhausted but exhilarated. The physical labor was unlike anything she had experienced in Boston, where young ladies were discouraged from any activity more strenuous than a leisurely stroll. Here, under the vast Colorado sky, she felt her body growing stronger, her mind sharper. Isaac proved to be a patient teacher, never condescending even when explaining basic concepts. As they worked side by side, Sophia began to understand what had drawn her father to this partnership. Isaac's intelligence was matched by his integrity, his technical knowledge balanced by a surprising philosophical bent that emerged in their conversations during breaks. "What made you stay in Willowcreek?" she asked him one afternoon as they sat in the shade, sharing a canteen of water. "With your education, you could have gone anywhere after the war." Isaac was silent for a moment, his gaze on the distant mountains. "I tried going back east afterward, but everything had changed, or perhaps I had. The cities felt confining. People talked endlessly about things that no longer seemed important." He took a drink before continuing. "I drifted west, worked on ranches for a while. When I reached Willowcreek, something about the mountains called to me. Your father offered me partnership in the mine a week after we met. Said he recognized a restless spirit when he saw one." "Were you restless?" Sophia asked. Isaac's eyes met hers. "Until recently." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken meaning. Sophia found herself wondering what it would be like to touch the scar along his jaw, to feel his arms around her outside the context of helping her navigate the rocky terrain. A rumble of distant thunder broke the spell. Dark clouds were gathering over the mountains, a common afternoon occurrence in summer. "We should get back to town," Isaac said, standing and offering her a hand up. "These storms come on fast." They made it halfway down the trail before the deluge hit. Rain fell in sheets, turning the path into slick mud. Lightning cracked overhead, followed immediately by booming thunder. "There's a line shack up ahead," Isaac shouted over the storm. "We can wait it out there." They urged their horses forward, finally reaching a small wooden structure nestled among the pines. Isaac helped Sophia dismount and led the horses to a lean-to at the side of the cabin, while she pushed open the door. The interior was sparse but dry, a single room with a rough plank table, 2 chairs, and a narrow cot. A small iron stove stood in the corner with a stack of firewood beside it. Isaac entered, water streaming from his hat and coat. "Trappers and prospectors use these shacks," he explained, removing his dripping hat. "Basic shelter for emergencies." Sophia stood shivering, her dress sodden and heavy. Isaac immediately began building a fire in the stove, his movements efficient despite his wet clothes. "You should take off that wet dress," he said matter-of-factly, his back to her as he worked. "There's probably a blanket on the cot. You'll catch pneumonia otherwise." Sophia hesitated, but the logic was undeniable. Her teeth were already chattering. She found a rough wool blanket on the cot and stepped behind it for minimal privacy. "No looking," she warned, though Isaac remained focused on coaxing flames from the kindling. "Wouldn't dream of it, Miss Clarke," he replied, but she detected a hint of amusement in his voice. Sophia struggled with the buttons of her dress, her fingers stiff with cold. After several fumbling attempts, she made a sound of frustration. "Everything all right?" Isaac asked. "The buttons," Sophia admitted reluctantly. "I can't manage them." Isaac was silent for a moment. "Would you like help?" The proper response would be an emphatic no, but Sophia was cold, wet, and far beyond Boston proprieties. "Please," she said quietly. Isaac approached slowly, his expression serious. "Turn around," he instructed gently. Sophia complied, gathering her wet hair over one shoulder. She felt his fingers at the top button of her dress, working carefully down her spine. Despite the cold, heat bloomed wherever his knuckles brushed her skin. "There," he said, his voice slightly hoarse as he finished. "I'll turn around now." True to his word, Isaac faced the stove while Sophia slipped out of the heavy dress and wrapped herself in the blanket. She draped the wet garment over a chair near the now crackling fire. "You should do the same with your shirt," she suggested. "It's soaked through." Isaac hesitated, then nodded. He removed his shirt, and Sophia couldn't help noticing the muscled contours of his back, marked with several long scars that could only have come from a whip or similar punishment. "The war?" she asked softly. Isaac tensed. "Prison camp," he replied shortly, not turning around. "Last year of fighting." He said nothing more, and Sophia didn't press. They sat in silence as the storm raged outside, the small room gradually warming from the stove's heat. "I was engaged before the war," Isaac said suddenly, still facing away from her, "to a girl from a good Virginia family. When I joined the Union Army, her family forbade any further contact." Sophia remained silent, sensing he needed to speak. "After the prison camp, after everything I'd seen and done, I couldn't go back to that life anyway," he continued. "Some things change you too deeply." "Is that why you came west? To forget?" Sophia asked. Isaac finally turned to look at her, his expression vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. "To remember who I could be, away from who I had been." The intimacy of the moment, of being alone together in the small cabin with the storm isolating them from the world, seemed to suspend normal boundaries. Sophia found herself sharing her own history, her mother's early death, her father's restlessness, her own stifled ambitions in Boston society. "I was engaged too, briefly," she admitted. "To a banker my father approved of before he left for the West. Walter was respectable, secure. And," Isaac prompted when she trailed off. "And entirely predictable," Sophia finished. Every conversation, every opinion, carefully calculated to offend no one and impress everyone. I broke it off 3 months before the wedding. Society was scandalized." "Is that why you came west? To escape the scandal?" Sophia considered this. "Perhaps partly. But mostly to find out why this place held my father when nothing else could. Why he chose this life over returning to us." "Have you found your answer?" Isaac asked, looking at him in the warm light of the fire. Sophia thought perhaps she had. There was a freedom here, not just from society's constraints but from its artifice. Life was harder but more honest. And this man before her embodied that honesty in his integrity, his directness, his willingness to see her as a partner rather than merely a woman to be protected. "I'm beginning to," she replied. The storm passed eventually, though the sky remained threatening. They dressed in their still damp clothes and rode back to town in comfortable silence, something having shifted between them during those hours in the line shack. At her cabin, Isaac helped her dismount but didn't immediately release her waist. "Sophia," he said, using her given name deliberately. "Would you have dinner with me tomorrow, not as partners discussing the mine, but as something else?" Her heart quickened at the request. "Yes," she replied simply. "I'd like that." Isaac's smile was worth all the hardship of the past weeks. "Until tomorrow, then." The next evening, Isaac called for her wearing a clean suit that, while not fashionable by Eastern standards, fit his tall frame well. He had trimmed his beard and slicked back his hair, and Sophia felt a flutter of appreciation as she took his arm. He escorted her not to the town's rough eating house, but to a small restaurant on the outskirts that she hadn't noticed before. "Madame Rousseau's," he explained as they approached the whitewashed building with cheerful curtains in the windows. "She's a French widow who came west with her daughter after the war. Best food in 3 counties." Inside, the restaurant was simple but charming, with tablecloths and actual glass rather than tin. Madame Rousseau herself greeted Isaac warmly in accented English. "Monsieur Xavier, it has been too long," she exclaimed, kissing both his cheeks, "and you bring a lovely lady." "Madam, this is Miss Sophia Clarke," Isaac introduced them. "Thomas Clarke's daughter." "Ah, your father was a good man," the woman said, taking Sophia's hands in hers. "He spoke of you with such pride. Come, I have saved the best table." The evening that followed was unlike anything Sophia had experienced in Willowcreek. The food was indeed excellent roast venison with herbed potatoes and vegetables from Madam's garden. Isaac ordered wine, and they talked easily about everything except the mine and its troubles. "How did you discover this place?" Sophia asked as they lingered over dessert, a delicate apple tart. "Your father brought me here to celebrate when we first formed our partnership," Isaac replied. "He said important occasions deserved proper recognition. And what are we celebrating tonight?" Sophia asked, meeting his gaze. Isaac reached across the table to take her hand. "New beginnings, perhaps." The simple touch sent warmth cascading through her. Since the afternoon in the line shack, Sophia had found herself thinking of Isaac at odd moments, wondering what it would be like to be held by him, to be kissed by him. Now, with his hand warm around hers, those thoughts returned with startling intensity. "I'd like that," she said softly. The walk home through the quiet streets seemed both too short and endless. When they reached her cabin, Isaac hesitated on the porch. "Sophia," he began, then stopped, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. She looked up at him in the moonlight, suddenly sure of what she wanted. "Would you like to come in? For coffee?" They both knew it wasn't really coffee she was offering, but a moment of continued connection, a chance to extend this evening that had taken them beyond their partnership into new territory. Inside, Sophia busied herself with the coffee pot while Isaac stood awkwardly in the small main room. When she turned to ask if he wanted sugar, she found him directly behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. "Sophia," he said again, his voice deeper than usual. "I should tell you, it's been a very long time since I've felt this way about anyone." Her heart pounded as she looked up into his blue eyes. "How do you feel, Isaac?" Instead of answering with words, he slowly leaned down, giving her every opportunity to step away. When she didn't move, his lips met hers in a kiss so gentle it was barely a touch. Sophia had been kissed before properly, chastely, by her former fiancé. This was nothing like those sterile contacts. Isaac's lips were warm and firm, and when her hands moved up to rest on his chest, she could feel his heartbeat racing beneath her fingers. When he began to draw back, Sophia followed instinctively, unwilling to break the connection. The second kiss was deeper, his arms encircling her waist to draw her closer. Time seemed suspended as they stood in her small kitchen, learning each other through increasingly urgent kisses. When they finally separated, both were breathing hard. "I should go," Isaac said reluctantly, though his hands remained at her waist, "before I forget myself entirely." Despite her disappointment, Sophia appreciated his restraint. They were venturing into dangerous territory, far from the chaperoned courtships of Boston. "Will I see you tomorrow?" she asked as he moved toward the door. "First thing," he promised. "We still have a mine to save." Their relationship took on a new dimension in the days that followed. During daylight, they worked side by side at the mine, focused on increasing production before the loan came due. In the evenings, they allowed themselves the luxury of courtship walks by the creek, dinners at her cabin or his small house on the edge of town, and increasingly passionate embraces that tested both their restraint. A week before the loan payment was due, they calculated their combined savings and the value of the most recent ore extraction. They were still $40 short. "We'll make it," Isaac assured her as they sat at her table reviewing the figures. "The ore we extracted yesterday still needs to be processed, and we can ask for a short extension if necessary." "From the Blackwell's cousin, I doubt he'll be accommodating," Sophia replied skeptically. Isaac frowned, recognizing the truth in her words. "Then we'll work harder. Double shifts if needed." "I have another option," Sophia said hesitantly. She went to her bedroom and returned with a small velvet box. Inside lay a pearl necklace with a small diamond pendant. "My mother's. I brought it with me thinking I might need to sell it." Isaac stared at the jewelry. "Sophia, no, that's your heritage. And the mine is my future," she replied firmly. "Our future, I hope." The implication of her words hung in the air between them. They had spoken of feelings of attachment, but not of what might come after the loan was paid. "What are you saying?" Isaac asked carefully. Sophia met his gaze steadily. "I'm saying that I came west expecting to stay only long enough to settle my father's affairs, but I've found something here I never expected." "The mine," Isaac suggested, though his eyes told her he understood her meaning. "You," Sophia corrected softly. "I've found you, and I don't want to leave." Isaac moved around the table and drew her to her feet, cupping her face in his work-roughened hands. "I don't want you to leave either," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I want you to stay with me, always." "Are you asking me something, Isaac Xavier?" Sophia prompted, her heart pounding. "Not yet," he replied with a small smile. "First we save the mine. Then I'll ask properly with a ring and everything a lady deserves, if that's what you want." "It's what I want," Sophia confirmed, rising on tiptoes to kiss him briefly. "Now let's get back to these figures." 2 days later, disaster struck. Sophia was at the assay office in town, negotiating the price for their latest ore extraction, when she heard shouting in the street. Running outside, she saw a rider galloping into town, his horse lathered with exertion. "Cave in at the Silver Creek mine," the man was shouting. "Get the doctor. Xavier's trapped." Sophia's world tilted sideways. She grabbed the rider's reins as he passed. "What happened?" "Blast went wrong," the man explained breathlessly. "Tunnel collapsed. Xavier pushed the other men out but got caught himself. They're digging now, but it's bad, miss." Without hesitation, Sophia ran to the livery, demanded the fastest horse they had, and galloped toward the mine, heedless of the curious stares that followed her. The scene at the mine was chaotic, men shouting, dust still settling from the collapsed tunnel, equipment being hastily assembled. Sophia dismounted before her horse had fully stopped and pushed through the crowd. "Where is he?" she demanded of a miner she recognized as one of their occasional helpers. "Still inside, Miss Clarke," the man replied, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. "About 30 feet in. We're shoring up the entrance to get to him." "Is he alive?" Sophia forced herself to ask the question, dreading the answer. Was when it happened, the miner said. He was calling out for a while. It's gone quiet now, but that don't mean nothing. Could be conserving his air. Doctor. Mason arrived shortly after, bringing medical supplies. He took one look at Sophia's pale face and guided her to a seat on a nearby boulder. Nothing you can do right now except stay out of the way, he advised kindly. These men know what they're doing. The hours that followed were the longest of Sophia's life. She watched as the rescue team carefully removed debris, installed support beams, and inched their way into the unstable tunnel. Occasionally they would pause, calling Isaac's name, listening for a response that never came. As dusk approached, one of the miners emerged from the tunnel entrance. "We've broken through," he announced. "He's alive." A ragged cheer went up from the gathered crowd. Sophia pushed forward, desperate for more information. "Stand back, everyone, Doctor," Mason ordered as he prepared to enter the tunnel. "I need space to work." "I'm going with you," Sophia insisted, following close behind him. The doctor glanced at her determined expression and nodded once. "Stay behind me and do exactly as I say." The tunnel was eerily silent except for the creaking of hastily installed support beams. Their lantern cast grotesque shadows on the rough walls as they made their way forward. After what seemed an eternity, they reached a small, cleared space where several miners knelt around a prone figure. Isaac lay half-buried under fallen rock, his face ghastly pale beneath a coating of dust and blood. One arm was clearly broken, bent at an unnatural angle, and a large gash across his forehead had painted half his face crimson. "Isaac," Sophia whispered, dropping to her knees beside him. His eyelids fluttered at the sound of her voice. "Sophia," he croaked, "you shouldn't be in here, dangerous." "Hush," she replied, taking his uninjured hand. "I'm exactly where I should be." Dr. Mason quickly examined him, his expression growing graver by the minute. "We need to get him out now," he said urgently. "Several ribs are broken, possibly puncturing a lung, and that head wound needs immediate attention." The process of extricating Isaac from the debris and carrying him carefully out of the tunnel was agonizing. Each jolt brought a groan of pain that tore at Sophia's heart. Outside, they loaded him onto a wagon padded with blankets for the journey to town. "Ride with him," Dr. Mason instructed Sophia. "Keep him still if you can and watch his breathing. I'll follow on horseback." The trip to town was a nightmare. Every rut in the road caused Isaac to wince, though he tried to hide his pain. Halfway there, he began coughing, and Sophia was horrified to see blood on his lips. "Stay with me," she pleaded, wiping his face with her handkerchief. "Just stay with me, Isaac." His blue eyes, clouded with pain, found hers. "Not going anywhere," he managed before another coughing spasm took him. At Dr. Mason's small clinic, they transferred Isaac to a bed, and the doctor immediately began treating his injuries. Sophia was banished to the waiting room where she paced relentlessly until Martha Miller arrived with a cup of tea and firm instructions to sit down. "He's strong," the minister's wife assured her, "and he has something to live for now. What if it's not enough?" Sophia asked, voicing her deepest fear. Martha patted her hand. "Faith, my dear, that's all any of us have at times like these." It was nearly midnight when Dr. Mason finally emerged, looking exhausted. "He's stable for now," he reported. "The head wound isn't as serious as I feared. The broken arm is set. It's the ribs and the lung that concern me. There's internal bleeding." "Will he live?" Sophia asked directly. "The next 24 hours will tell," the doctor replied honestly. "He's asking for you." Isaac looked terribly diminished in the narrow hospital bed, his skin ashen against the white sheets. His chest was tightly wrapped, his arm splinted and bandaged, his forehead stitched and dressed. "There she is," he murmured as Sophia approached. His voice was weak, but a spark of his usual warmth remained in his eyes. "You promised to be careful," Sophia chided gently, taking the chair beside his bed. "Rock didn't listen," he replied with the ghost of a smile. "Sophia, the loan." "Don't worry about that now," she interrupted. "Just focus on getting well." Isaac's uninjured hand found hers. "Due tomorrow," he insisted. "The banker, coming from Denver." Sophia had completely forgotten about the loan in the chaos of the cave-in. "I'll handle it," she promised. "I have the pearl necklace, remember?" "It's enough with what we've already saved." "Don't want you to sacrifice that," Isaac protested weakly. "It's just a necklace," Sophia replied. "What matters is our future." Isaac's eyes were growing heavy. The laudanum Dr. Mason had administered taking effect. "Our future," he echoed. "Like the sound of that." "So do I," Sophia whispered, watching as he drifted into sleep. "So do I." She stayed by his side all night, dozing occasionally in the uncomfortable chair. By morning, his fever had risen alarmingly, and Dr. Mason's expression grew concerned as he examined him. "The infection's taking hold," he explained to Sophia. "I've given him quinine, but we'll need to watch him closely." "I'll stay," Sophia replied immediately. "You need to meet the banker," Martha Miller reminded her, having arrived with breakfast. "I'll sit with Mr. Xavier." Torn between her promise to Isaac and her reluctance to leave him, Sophia finally agreed. She returned to her cabin, retrieved the pearl necklace and their carefully saved money, and made her way to the bank. The banker from Denver was already there, a portly man with small eyes and an impatient manner who introduced himself as Herbert Blackwell. "Miss Clarke," he said, not bothering to rise when she entered. "I understand your partner is indisposed." "Unfortunate timing, considering your loan payment is due today." "We have the money," Sophia replied coolly, placing the cash and the velvet box on the desk. $500 as agreed. The jewels cover any shortfall." Blackwell opened the box, examining the pearls with obvious avarice. "These will need to be appraised." "They're worth at least twice what we still owe," Sophia stated. "My mother purchased them in Paris before I was born." "Perhaps," Blackwell conceded, "but their value is subjective. I'll need time to have them properly evaluated." Sophia sensed a trap. The loan agreement specified payment today. "We are prepared to pay in full with this combination of cash and collateral." "Collateral must be agreed upon in advance, Miss Clarke," Blackwell replied smoothly. "I'm afraid I cannot accept these jewels as payment without proper appraisal. However, I might be persuaded to grant a short extension, if you would consider an alternative arrangement." "What sort of arrangement?" Sophia asked warily. Blackwell smiled unpleasantly. "My cousins have expressed interest in your claim. They're prepared to make a generous offer enough to clear the loan and leave you with a tidy sum. Given Mr. Xavier's condition, it might be the most prudent course." So that was their game: force a default on the loan, then acquire the mine at a fraction of its value. Sophia felt cold anger replace her anxiety. "Mr. Blackwell," she said evenly, "the Silver Creek mine is not for sale. As for the loan, I believe the terms allow payment in legal tender or equivalent value. These pearls are genuine and their worth well established. If you refuse to accept them, I will consider the bank in breach of the agreement." Blackwell's smile vanished. "That's a serious accusation, Miss Clarke. One that would require legal proceedings to resolve proceedings that could take months. By which time, the default period would have long passed, and the claim would revert to the bank regardless." Sophia realized she was outmatched in this financial duel. But before she could respond, the bank door opened and Sheriff Collins entered, followed by Reverend Miller. "Morning, Miss Clarke," the sheriff said casually. Reverend here tells me you might need a witness for a transaction. Reverend Miller smiled benignly. The Lord works in mysterious ways, Miss Clarke. I happened to mention to the sheriff that you were meeting with Mr. Blackwell today, and he recalled that Judge Patterson is in town for circuit court. Understanding the implicit support, Sophia turned back to Blackwell with renewed confidence. As I was saying, Mr. Blackwell, we're prepared to satisfy the loan today. Should you refuse reasonable payment, we'll be forced to seek legal remedy immediately, with Judge Patterson presiding. The banker's face reddened, but he recognized when he was outmaneuvered. Very well, he said stiffly. I'll accept the cash and hold the pearls as collateral pending proper appraisal. If they prove insufficient, the balance will be due immediately. That's acceptable, Sophia agreed. She signed the necessary papers, obtained a receipt for the payment, and left the bank with a lightened heart. The immediate crisis was averted. Her relief was short-lived, however. When she returned to Dr. Mason's clinic, she found the doctor looking grave. The fever's worsened, he reported. And he's coughing up more blood. I've done everything I can, but... He can't die, Sophia said fiercely. Not now, not when we've saved the mine. It's not up to either of us, Dr. Mason replied gently. You should sit with him, talk to him. Sometimes that helps. Isaac was delirious when she entered, mumbling incoherently about the war, about her father, about cave-ins and silver veins. Sophia bathed his burning forehead with cool cloths, speaking soothingly even when she wasn't sure he could hear her. The loan is paid, she told him. The mine is safe. Now you need to get well so we can start that future we talked about. Through the long night, Isaac's condition worsened. His breathing became increasingly labored, and twice Dr. Mason had to drain fluid from his chest. By dawn, Sophia was numb with fear and exhaustion, praying as she had never prayed before. As the first light of day filtered through the clinic windows, Isaac's fever broke suddenly. His breathing eased and he fell into a natural sleep rather than the restless unconsciousness of before. It's a good sign, Dr. Mason said cautiously when he examined him. Not a guarantee, but a good sign. Sophia finally allowed herself to be persuaded to return home for a few hours' rest, extracting a promise that she would be called immediately if there was any change. She slept deeply, emotionally and physically drained. When she woke, the sun was already starting to set. Alarmed at having slept so long, she hurried back to the clinic. To her surprise, Isaac was sitting up in bed, pale and weak but alert. His face brightened when he saw her. "There you are," he said, his voice hoarse but stronger than it had been. "Dr. Mason said you finally went to get some sleep." Sophia rushed to his side, taking his hand carefully. "How do you feel?" "Like a tunnel collapsed on me," he replied with a shadow of his usual humor. "But better than yesterday. Dr. Mason says I'm too stubborn to die." "Thank God for that," Sophia said fervently. "You frightened me terribly, Xavier." "I'm sorry," he replied, his expression turning serious. "Did you manage with the banker?" Sophia nodded. "The loan is paid. I used the pearls as collateral, but Sheriff Collins and Reverend Miller made sure Mr. Blackwell behaved himself." Isaac squeezed her hand weakly. "You're remarkable, Sophia Clarke." "I had proper motivation," she replied with a small smile. "A future to protect." His blue eyes, though still shadowed with pain, held hers intently. "I meant what I said before about wanting you to stay, not just for the mine, but for us." "I know," Sophia assured him, "and I meant it too." Isaac's recovery was slow but steady. Dr. Mason insisted on keeping him at the clinic for 2 weeks, until the risk of his lung collapsing had passed. Sophia divided her time between caring for him and managing the mine, hiring 2 experienced miners with part of their remaining funds to continue extraction, while Isaac recuperated. When he was finally strong enough to return to his own home, Sophia helped settle him in, arranging for meals to be delivered and checking on him several times a day, despite his protests that she was working too hard. "You don't need to fuss so much," he insisted as she adjusted his pillows one evening. "I'm not an invalid anymore. Dr. Mason says you're not to exert yourself for at least another week," Sophia reminded him. "That broken arm needs time to heal properly, and your ribs." "Sophia," Isaac interrupted gently. "Come sit beside me for a moment." She complied, perching carefully on the edge of his bed. "What is it?" "I've been thinking," he began, taking her hand with his uninjured one. "About what happened, about how close I came to not having a future at all." "I don't like to think about that," Sophia admitted. "Neither do I," Isaac agreed, "but it's made some things very clear to me." He shifted slightly, wincing as the movement jarred his healing ribs. "I don't want to waste any more time. Life's too uncertain, especially out here." Sophia's heart quickened. "What are you saying, Isaac?" "I'm saying that I love you, Sophia Clarke," he stated simply. "I think I started falling in love with you the moment you stepped off that stagecoach, looking so determined and a little bit terrified. I've grown to admire your courage, your intelligence, your willingness to work alongside me instead of expecting to be protected from life's hardships." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes at his words. "Isaac, let me finish," he requested gently. "I know this isn't how you imagined your life unfolding. You're educated, cultured, you could have had a comfortable life in Boston. Instead, you're here in this rough mining town, covered in dust most days, dealing with men like the Blackwells." "I don't regret it," Sophia assured him. "Not for a moment. Even so," Isaac continued, "I want you to be sure, because once I'm healed, I intend to ask you properly to be my wife. But before I do, I need to know that you truly want this life, not just me, but everything that comes with me. The mine, the dangers, the uncertainties of the frontier." Sophia moved closer, carefully leaning down to press her lips to his. When she drew back, she met his gaze steadily. "I'm afraid I'll disappoint you," she said softly. "I'm not as strong as I pretend to be sometimes. I get frightened, I make mistakes. I'm still learning what it means to live out here." Isaac raised his hand to cup her cheek. "And you think I'm not afraid? That I don't worry about failing the mine, failing you?" "You could never fail me," Sophia whispered. In answer, Isaac kissed her forehead and stayed, his lips lingering against her skin in a gesture so tender it brought fresh tears to her eyes. "Then we'll face our fears together," he murmured against her brow. "Day by day." As summer turned to fall, Isaac regained his strength. The mine continued to produce steadily, allowing them to hire permanent workers and purchase better equipment. When the banker returned with news that the pearls had been appraised at more than double what they owed, Sophia used the excess to buy lumber for expanding operations. On a crisp October evening, Isaac took Sophia for a ride to their favorite spot overlooking the valley. The aspen trees were ablaze with golden leaves, and the distant mountains wore the first dusting of snow on their peaks. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Isaac said as they dismounted. "I never grow tired of this view." "It's magnificent," Sophia agreed, breathing in the clean mountain air. "I can see why my father loved it here." Isaac took her hand, leading her to a flat boulder where they often sat to watch the sunset. But instead of sitting beside her, he remained standing, his expression uncharacteristically nervous. "Sophia," he began, then cleared his throat. "I had a whole speech planned, but now that we're here, I find I just want to say it plainly." Reaching into his pocket, he withdrew a small box and opened it to reveal a ring with a modest diamond flanked by two smaller sapphires. "I love you," he said simply. "More than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me?" Sophia looked from the ring to his face, seeing all the hope and love she felt reflected in his eyes. "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you, Isaac Xavier." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "It was my grandmother's," he explained. "My mother sent it when I wrote to her about you." "It's perfect," Sophia assured him, admiring the way the stones caught the light. "When did you write to your mother?" "From my hospital bed," Isaac admitted. Nearly dying has a way of clarifying one's priorities. I told her all about the remarkable woman who was saving our mine while I was laid up with broken bones. "And what did she say?" Sophia asked, curious about this family she had never met. "She said any woman who could manage that was clearly too good for me, but she was glad I had finally come to my senses about what matters in life." Isaac chuckled. "She wants to come for the wedding if her health permits travel." "I would like that," Sophia said sincerely. "To meet the woman who raised such a good man." They were married in Willowcreek's small church 2 months later, with Reverend Miller officiating. Isaac's mother did make the journey from Pennsylvania, a dignified woman whose reserve melted when she saw how her son looked at his bride. The entire town turned out for the celebration. Even the Blackwell brothers, who had become considerably more respectful since their cousin's failed attempt to seize the mine. After the ceremony, Isaac surprised Sophia by taking her not to his small house, but to a new cabin built closer to town, larger than either of their previous homes, with a proper parlor and 2 bedrooms. "When did you do this?" Sophia gasped as he carried her across the threshold, ignoring her protests about his still healing ribs. "I had help," Isaac admitted, setting her down in the center of the main room. "The miners pitched in during off hours. Consider it a community wedding gift. Everyone's been inspired by how you've transformed the mine's operation." It was true. In the months of Isaac's recovery, Sophia had implemented new record-keeping systems, negotiated better terms with the assay office, and established regular payment schedules that earned the loyalty of their workers. What had begun as necessity during Isaac's convalescence had evolved into a true partnership that utilized both their strengths. "It's wonderful," Sophia said, exploring the comfortable rooms furnished with a mixture of practical Western pieces and a few quality items shipped from Denver. "But you shouldn't have strained yourself helping build it." "I supervised mostly," Isaac assured her, drawing her into his arms. "And I wanted our new life together to begin in a home that was truly ours, not mine or your father's." That night, as they lay together in their new marriage bed, Sophia rested her head on Isaac's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Happy," he murmured, stroking her hair. "Completely," she replied, "though I still worry sometimes." "About what?" Sophia traced the healing scar on his ribs gently. "That something will happen to you, that the mine will fail, that I won't be strong enough for this life." Isaac tipped her chin up to meet his gaze. "Do you remember what I told you months ago when you said you were afraid you'd disappoint me?" "That we would face our fears together," Sophia recalled. "Day by day," Isaac completed the thought. "That's how we'll build our life, Sophia, not without fear or difficulty, but together through whatever comes." As if to test their resolve, the following year brought both triumphs and challenges. The silver vein widened, bringing unprecedented profits, but also attracting unwanted attention from larger mining interests. A harsh winter isolated Willowcreek for nearly a month, forcing them to ration supplies. And in the spring, Sophia discovered she was expecting their first child. "Are you certain?" Isaac asked when she told him the news, his expression a mixture of joy and concern. "Dr. Mason confirmed it yesterday," Sophia replied, unable to contain her smile despite her own anxieties. "We're going to have a baby in the fall." Isaac whooped with delight, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around before abruptly setting her down again. "Should I not do that? Will it harm the baby?" Sophia laughed at his sudden caution. "I'm not made of glass, Isaac. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, even out here on the frontier." Nevertheless, as her pregnancy progressed, Isaac became increasingly protective, insisting she reduce her involvement in the mine's daily operations and hiring a young woman from town to help with household chores. "You're being ridiculous," Sophia told him one evening as he fussed over whether her chair was comfortable enough. "I'm pregnant, not invalid." "Humor me," Isaac replied, unrepentant. "It's my first time being a father." Despite her protests, Sophia secretly appreciated his attentiveness. As her body changed, and the reality of impending motherhood set in, her own fears surfaced of childbirth so far from modern medical facilities, of raising a child in the sometimes harsh Western environment, of balancing motherhood with her role in their growing business. In her 7th month, a letter arrived from Boston. An old school friend had discovered Sophia's whereabouts and written to reconnect. The letter was full of news about mutual acquaintances, social events, and the friend's recent marriage to a prominent attorney. "You ever miss it?" Isaac asked, finding Sophia on the porch rereading the letter with a pensive expression. "The life you could have had there." Sophia considered the question honestly. "Sometimes I miss certain comforts: hot baths without having to heat water bucket by bucket, shops with the latest fashions, concerts and lectures." She folded the letter carefully. "But then, I remember how constrained I felt there, how predetermined my path was." She took his hand, placing it on her rounded belly where their child kicked vigorously. "This is where I belong, Isaac. With you, building something that's truly ours." Their son, Thomas Isaac Xavier, was born on a clear September night in 1879, after a difficult but ultimately uncomplicated labor. Dr. Mason pronounced both mother and child healthy, and Isaac, who had paced outside until permitted to enter, wept openly when he first held his son. "He's perfect," he whispered, staring in wonder at the tiny face. "Sophia, he's absolutely perfect." "He looks like you," she replied tiredly, watching her husband cradle their child with hands that could break rock but now touched the infant with infinite gentleness. "Poor boy," Isaac joked, but his eyes never left his son's face. "Let's hope he has your brains and my luck." "Your integrity," Sophia corrected, "and hopefully neither of our stubbornness." Life adjusted to accommodate their growing family. A corner of their bedroom housed a cradle Isaac had crafted himself, and the mine office gained a small alcove where Sophia could work with the baby nearby. The profits from the increasingly productive Silver Creek mine allowed them to invest in other ventures: a share in the general store, a small cattle operation run by a trusted foreman. By the time Thomas was walking, Willowcreek had grown considerably, largely due to the success of the Xavier Clarke mine, as it was now known. A proper school had been built, along with a new church and an actual hotel that replaced the old boarding house. Madame Rousseau's restaurant thrived, and her daughter married the town's young doctor who had come to assist the aging Dr. Mason. "We've helped build something good here," Isaac observed one evening as they sat on their porch, watching Thomas toddle after fireflies in the yard. "Something that will last." "We have," Sophia agreed, leaning against his shoulder. "Though I never expected any of this when I stepped off that stage coach." "No regrets?" Isaac asked, wrapping his arm around her. "Not one," she assured him. "Except perhaps that my father couldn't see it all, the mine's success, his grandson. How happy I am here with you." "He knows," Isaac said with quiet certainty. "Wherever he is, he knows." As the years passed, their family grew. A daughter, Elizabeth, joined them in 1881, followed by another son, James, in 1884. The mine continued to prosper, though the initial vein eventually played out, requiring them to explore new areas of the claim. Isaac's engineering skills and Sophia's business acumen guided the operation through the natural cycles of the industry. By the time Thomas was ready for advanced education, the family had the means to send him to university in Denver, where he studied mining engineering like his father. Elizabeth, showing her mother's aptitude for figures, later joined the business as financial manager. Young James, with a more adventurous spirit, eventually established a branch of the family business in the newly opened Oklahoma Territory. Through it all the booms and busts of the mining economy, the gradual taming of the frontier, the inevitable losses of friends and the joys of watching their children grow, Isaac and Sophia remained partners in every sense. Their love, forged in the challenges of that first uncertain year, deepened with each passing season. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1903, their children organized a celebration that drew people from throughout the region. Willowcreek, now a proper small city with electric lights and telephone service, had grown around the foundation their partnership had helped establish. That evening, after the festivities ended and their grown children had departed with their own families, Isaac and Sophia walked to the overlook where he had proposed so many years before. "It's changed so much," Sophia observed, looking down at the valley where scattered electric lights now twinkled where once only a few lanterns had glowed. "Some things haven't changed," Isaac replied, taking her hand in his. Though both were now in their 50s, their hands still fit together perfectly, the calluses of shared work making them match. "You remember what you said to me in this very spot all those years ago?" he asked, turning to face her. Sophia smiled. "I believe I said yes to a very important question. Before that," Isaac reminded her, "you said you were afraid you'd disappoint me. Did I? That seems so long ago now." Isaac touched her face gently, tracing the lines that years of sun and laughter had etched there. "You never did, you know. Not once in all these years." "Nor you me," Sophia replied softly, "even when I was unreasonable or frightened or difficult." "Especially then," Isaac said with a smile, "because that's when I got to be strong for you as you've so often been for me." As the last light faded from the western sky, they stood together looking out over the life they had built, a life neither could have imagined when they first met on that dusty street 26 years earlier. "Day by day," Sophia murmured, resting her head against his shoulder. "Together," Isaac completed, pressing a kiss to her forehead and staying there just as he always had, just as he always would.